Hello, Jimmy here again. Today I'm in a former churchyard, and this is a former churchyard on Bishop Hill in York. There was a church here for well over 1,000 years, and now it's just a lovely little green space. So you found me in a place full of dead people, and bushes, and birdsong again. Well done. So I put up a little post, a community post, set that to go a couple of days before this is due to go out, and I am pretty sure that there's going to be a fair bit of what-ifing, and oh, I hope it's not going to be this, and what do you mean, gay Vikings? We can't use modern labels to describe people in the past. I know. But this video is about modern perceptions of homosexual acts in the Viking Age, because there's an awful lot of misinformation out there, surprise surprise, on the internet about how people in the Viking Age saw butt stuff between two men. Let's not pretend we're talking about butt stuff, and that is a problem because a lot of the perceptions people have come from a misunderstanding of the sources. So what we're going to do today is look at the source material that we've got, what it actually says, what it means, and how that's been interpreted. Before we start on that, I hope that you noticed my new intro, and the new intro is by a wonderful Finnish artist called Antti Palosaari, and he has offered to make me this intro. He's made an amazing job of it. He's a fantastic artist and animator, and I've linked to his website in the description for this video. His work is absolutely fantastic. He is highly trained, he's highly qualified, he's very communicative, and he is a friend of the channel, and he hasn't given me any money to do this. I haven't given him any money to do the introduction. He wanted to do an intro for the channel, and I think that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So Antti, thank you so much for my new animated intro. It features my logo, which is by a wonderful man called James Feekins, who is a fellow Welshman and Viking Age reenactor. So diolch yn fawr iawn i'r ddau ohonoch chi. Thank you very much to both of you. Go check out some of Antti's other work. His work is all to an amazing standard. He is open to commissions, and if you are going to commission him, he will do a fantastic job on basically any animation project you need him to do. He will smash it out of the water. So thank you so much, Antti, for my new amazing animations. Let's get on with the video. Obviously, you don't have to design an animated introduction for my videos, but if you do want to support the channel either by joining the Patreon or by throwing something at the Ko-fi page, it's all really appreciated. My patrons are absolute lifesavers and absolute heroes, and you are literally helping me. You are the reason I can do these videos. You're the reason I can spend time researching and editing and filming, and I really appreciate that. You're literally making these videos happen, so diolch o'r galon, thank you very much. So the first thing people do very often when you talk about love between two men in the Viking Age is they say, oh, it was banned and you would be punished for it. So we're going to dig into that first of all, because we have no written evidence from the Viking Age, from Viking Scandinavia, from the places the Vikings came from, Old Norse cultural countries, that says this is bad and wrong and you will be punished for it. There's no legislation from that period that suggests you would be punished for being in love with another man. That's not a thing that we have. What people then say is, yes, and they would throw you into a bog. And if you are watching this thinking, they threw gay people into bogs in the Viking Age, boy do I have some news for you. The bog bodies that we have are pre-Viking Age, almost exclusively pre-Viking Age. The ones that people tend to reference, including this guy, are very pre-Viking Age. This guy died more than 1,000 years before the Viking Age started. More than 1,000 years. We don't have any illustrative bog bodies from the Viking Age that suggest that this is something that was done. People then say, but Roman writers wrote about it. Again, I have some news for you. The Roman writer who wrote about this was the writer Tacitus, and Tacitus wrote a book called Germania, and Germania, the book, is from around about, I think, 89 to 90 AD. Editing Jimmy will put the actual date that we think is from up there. And there are lots of problems with Tacitus. Tacitus is one of the most famously unreliable ethnographers that we have from ancient Rome. And he wrote books about the Germans, he wrote a couple of books about the Germans and various other European ethnicities, and a lot of it is unreliable. He used older writers like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus to firm up his writings, let's say. Some of it is out of date. He talks about the Danubians in Germania being reliable and loyal clients. At that time, they had seceded from the empire under the Emperor Domitian, so oops, not quite right. And what Tacitus actually talks about in relation to Germania and this video is corpore infames. And corpore infames is quite a contested term. We don't know necessarily what it means. The concept of infames, of infamy, doesn't mean gay. It doesn't mean has sex with people of the same sex or gender. It basically means somebody who doesn't enjoy the social niceties of being a Roman citizen in the same way as a full Roman citizen could expect. People who are infames, people who are infamous in Rome, for example, sex workers, enslaved people, undertakers, and actors. But also people like gladiators and other entertainers. So it doesn't necessarily mean what you think. It's not a cut and dried, oh, it means people who have gay sex were thrown into bogs. What he is saying is people who are not conforming physically to how society expects them to conform are killed and thrown into bogs, which is potentially even worse as a way to deal with human beings, but we don't know if that's true. Tacitus never visited Germania, he never visited the German provinces. At this point, when he's writing it, we're not even close to where the Vikings are. We are like on the Rhine, basically, and even that's still being contested at various points. So Tacitus, as a source that the Vikings threw people into bogs, extremely unreliable. The bog bodies themselves, also extremely unreliable. Moving forwards, there is a forged capitulary. A capitulary is basically a royal command written into law from the Carolingian era, so from the start of the Viking Age, that says anybody who is homosexual should be burnt after the Roman fashion. This is a fake, it's a forgery, it's an obvious forgery, and it's just wrong. Roman law was nuanced on the subject of same-sex relationships. In fact, it's quite interesting how they saw it. It was perfectly fine for a Roman man to have a romantic relationship with another man as long as he was the dominant partner. So there is this idea in ancient Rome and in Greece, in many Greek city-states as well, that if you are the passive partner in a same-sex relationship, that is dishonourable, that is effeminate, you're not masculine enough. You have to be the top. And that's really interesting. We have poetry that talks about it's quite aggressively sexual poetry written by men towards other men. I'll link to it in the description, but I'm not going to go into it because I like being monetized. But basically, in ancient Rome, if you as a man want to engage in sexual relations with an actor or a gladiator or one of your own enslaved people or somebody else's with the permission of the enslaver, that's all cool, that's great. If you want them to be in the dominant sexual position, that is bad. You cannot do that. I mean, you can do that, but you will effectively then become infamous for it. So we have lots of poems, and we actually have lots of various, we have plays, and we have other writings that talk about the benefits of same-sex sexual relationships over heterosexual sexual relationships, which is really interesting. They talk about, like, oh, actually with boys it's better for reasons A, B and C, as long as the boy is younger than the age of 20 and above the age of 12. It's not great. It's really not great reading if you're not in a great headspace. Read it on a sunny day. The idea of the Roman law being, oh, ban gay people, is hilariously, laughably wrong. What else do we have from the Viking Age then? The answer is basically nothing. We have some church writings that say this should be avoided. Avoid same-sex relationships. Because if you engage in them, you might be excommunicated, you might be chastised, you might be made a social pariah, but there are no real explicit laws from the Viking Age that say you'll get beaten up, you'll get executed, whatever. What then happens is later on we have sources like the Gulathingslog. The Gulathingslog is basically a list of Norwegian laws from the 12th century. Chapter 32 of one edition of the Gulathingslog talks about something, which I have in my notes because I'm not good at remembering things. So basically, the Gulathingslog, chapter 32, talks about being outlawed. You'll be outlawed, and your property will be seized if you engage in same-sex sexual relationships. This is introduced by King Magnus Erlingsson and a bishop whose name I forget in the 1160s. The 1160s, so generations after Viking raids have stopped, Norway is Christianized, they're trying to kind of codify laws. And this is the earliest set of Norwegian laws we have. This is as early as we can go on this stuff, is the 12th century and the mid to late 12th century. But obviously, this is church law. So if your property is taken away from you because you've been outlawed, because you've broken this church law, that property will go to the church. So it's not a great reflection of how Vikings thought about same-sex relationships, is it? Because this is a 12th century ecclesiastical law that has some kind of obvious ulterior motives. Catholic Church likes having land. Later on we have some more, again, 13th century editions of things like the Gragas laws, the Grey Goose laws, and certain Icelandic laws. Lots of them don't even mention same-sex relationships, and if they do, it's kind of just like, yeah, try not to. But we do have the three words that are bad, the words rargur, stråðin, and sorðin. And respectively, they basically mean unmanly, effeminate, enslaved. Stråðin kind of comes from this word that means hard work, like exhaustingly hard work. So enslavement, basically. And being the taker in butt stuff. And that's what these three words mean. So, according to some later literature, these are the three words you cannot call somebody. Not even in a poem, not even in an insult poem. And they were popular. So, in an insult poem, you can go as nasty as you like. Don't say somebody is effeminate. Don't call somebody a slave. Don't say somebody takes it up the butt. If you do, they can challenge you to a fight to the death. And if they win, you have to pay them compensation. Like, imagine being that fragile in your masculinity that if somebody says, hey, I hear he takes it up the butt, you challenge them to a fight to the death. Mate, go to therapy. So, again, this is post-Viking Age, but we do have a runestone that says anybody who destroys this runestone is ergi, is rargur, well, we're not sure, quite frankly, what it means. It either means a wizard, a warlock, effeminate, a practicer of seidr, women's magic, so somebody who defies those gender norms that are expected. We're not 100%. So once again, there's nuance. I should really get that put on merch. If anybody wants to do me like an It's Nuanced shirt design, feel free. Just make your own, who cares? So yeah, there's this weird kind of 12th, 13th century mushrooming of like, oh, and also gay sex is bad if you're the taker. We've got an example from Bjorn's saga, one of the later sagas, again, post-Viking Age, that talks about somebody having a woodcut in their possession, and it has a depiction of two men having sex. One of them, the passive partner, has a blue hat on. And scholars have interpreted this as meaning it's Odin. And obviously Odin is, in various places and in various sources, described as somebody who practices women's magic. Seidr, he is described as a passive sexual partner with a man. Loki gives birth to children. Thor dresses in women's clothes. Alright, he does it to, like, get his stuff back, but still. Is this actually later Christian negative depictions of Old Norse heathen gods disrupting gender norms, making them seem effeminate, making them seem ergi? Or is it much more complicated Old Norse concepts of what is okay and not okay? That is, if the gods are doing it, it can't be that bad. We don't know. As with so much in the Viking Age, we don't know. What we know is, in theory, according to these 12th and 13th century laws, there is no punishment for engaging in same-sex relationships with enslaved people in your possession. Because at the time, these are people who are considered property. If you do it to somebody else's enslaved people, that's bad. That is a criminal offence, because you are damaging their property by sexually assaulting them. If they're yours, that's pretty much okay. In fact, in some laws, you can even kill your own enslaved people with impunity. So, these laws, are they real reflections of earlier Germanic ideals? Frankly, from the evidence that we have, that seems almost 100% unfounded as a theory. In fact, it's been rejected by a lot of scholars. The idea that it comes through 1,000... like, where is it in the Leges Barbarorum? Where is it in all of these Germanic law codes, the Visigothic law codes, the Alemannic law codes, the Bavarian law codes, the Burgundian law codes? They don't mention it. They do not mention same-sex relationships, homosexuality, any of them. That is 1,000+ years of surviving Germanic law codes, all of them different, all of them very varied, some of them quite comprehensive, that doesn't mention gay sex. And then all of a sudden in the 12th and 13th century, suddenly, with these church-sponsored laws, it's a bad thing. Coincidence? So, I've put a load of reading in the description of this video. I hope you go and have a read of some of it, because it's really quite interesting. But the long and the short of it is, what we know about same-sex relationships in the Viking Age, you could write on the back of a postage stamp with room to spare. The later evidence suggests that a European attitude towards it is similar to the Roman attitude towards it. I mean, we know that later kings of England, for example, had male favourites that were almost certainly sexual partners. So, is that what we're seeing in these high medieval Norwegian and Icelandic laws? Could well be. Does it reflect what was happening 300 years before at the height of the Viking Age? Absolutely not. How can it? There was a completely different cultural and religious system in place at that point, and we've got no evidence from it of how they saw people. There's this runestone that says anybody who demolishes this runestone is ergi. Is that, as an example, I grew up in North Wales at a time where saying something was gay was synonymous with saying it was bad. Oh, that's really gay. That's really bad. That's not great. And is that what this runestone is saying? Oh, anybody who breaks this is gay. Like, I doubt it. I think it's much more nuanced than that. I think it's much more a case of saying anybody who practices this is a warlock, is practicing bad magic, and that is a curse on them. That's what I think it's saying. But it's food for thought, isn't it? And I know a lot of my videos don't come at you and give you a solid conclusion. That's because that's not how archaeology works. It's not how history works. It opens up more lines of inquiry, more strings that we weave into the web that help us understand the past, but they don't give us the whole picture, and they never can. Unless somebody invents a time machine, we'll never get all the answers. But I hope that this was interesting for you. I hope that it was enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed listening to me butchering Icelandic, and I'm very sorry to all my Icelandic viewers. Thank you very much for joining me. Diolch yn fawr iawn am ymuno, and tan tro nesa, till the next time, hwyl fawr. Bye-bye. You want some extra? You want some extra churchyard? Here you go. A little bit of churchyard for you. Let's focus up. So the church ran up here. This is the site of the church. And it was demolished. And now there's some gravestones at the back there. There's a couple of gravestones behind me. There's some more over this side as well. Beautiful.